interesting news once again from Belarus. What's called a stop list of musicians, artists who are basically banned from performing in Belarus. Quite a big list in which somehow not only like Belarusian or Russian artists who stand against basically a Russian war in Ukraine, against Belarusian support of this war, etc. somehow, somehow there are people like Lady Gaga, for example, in that in that list, which is like, yeah, of course, because Lady Gaga just wanted to visit Belarus, just just always wanted to perform in this shithole of a country, or like Cher, for example, right? And like, no, no, she will not be allowed here. This is just like, I don't understand these people, but yeah, basically. Almost like 100 people, 87 presumably people, or artists, bands, things like that, who are not allowed to sing songs. Or not allowed to sing songs. Obviously, bands like Lepis Trubetskoy, they were like vocal against Belarusian regime for the longest time, and they've been banned for the longest time, for example, in Belarus, and I'm pretty sure they are right now in some Baltic state. I think maybe in Poland, not sure, Lithuania maybe. Doesn't really matter, but even like big rock bands like DDT, like B2, B2, which is a band from Belarus actually. From it, now it's kind of they kind of considered like a Russian band, but they've been actually founded in Babruisk, in a smaller kind of city in Belarus. Once again, like DDT, people even probably in the government of Russia grew up on, or should have grown up on rock bands like this, like DDT, like Bidva, should have listened to them. And obviously there are like other newer bands, younger bands, which obviously like people who are younger are more likely to be against this war, or wars in general, in particular against obviously dictatorial regimes, totalitarianism and things like that, right? But it's interesting that even bands like older, like that they would be basically considered something like, I don't know, like Coldplay or like U2, something like, oh, maybe not U2 because they're like absolutely giant, but yeah, maybe like a Coldplay or whatever, something like that. If you want to compare it with something. And same with B2, B2, also very big band. But yeah, and then basically they like journalists asked certain clubs, certain like restaurants, wherever, can you actually sing those songs? Like, for example, if it's like a karaoke bar or whatever. No, not really. Unfortunately, like not allowed to do it now. So just think about it. Like, okay, like if you're living in any Western country, right? First of all, especially if you're like living in US, like, guys, remember 2016 to 2020, everybody but their grandma was talking shit on Trump on Twitter. How many people got jailed for that? They were calling Trump actual like dictator, fucking Nazi, whatever. All of the epithets, just because they didn't like the character of that shit, of that cunt. And he did some heinous shit, mostly putting that fifth judge, basically changing the highest court, Supreme Court of the United States, right, to basically being Republican, which obviously now led to this, I think, right, Roe versus Wade, and abortion rights and all of these kind of things. He did his fair shit part, right? But how many people got jailed? How many people got banned from like talking, not from, because of their speech, right? How many of them got banned from performing at concerts or things like that? None. And this is what's actually happening in real dictatorship states. That's why it kind of triggers me a little bit when people who live in UK, Germany, United States, whatever, Canada, they compare some of the shitty decisions of their government, or attempts even, maybe not even decisions yet, but attempts to create some heinous laws, as like, oh no, we're living in a fucking dictatorship state, oh blah blah blah. No, people, you don't, and it's really crucial and important for you to realize that you don't, so that you can actually fight when you still have time, basically, and not be just a passive observer of politics. Because I feel like this is something, like, this is a major downside of all the educational system, I think, across the globe, that it makes you not care really about politics, and it kind of presents it as if it's some kind of a TV show or something, like entertainment or whatever, which in fact it is something that every citizen should be involved, actually, and everybody should kind of, get at least some understanding of what's going on. And this is something that should be carefully managed and carefully sort of guarded in a way that, in such a way that politicians couldn't, without the major approval of, like, bigger part of the country, right? And I would put it like at 80% of the country should approve some bigger changes, like whatever, voting for Brexit, for example, or shit like that. It shouldn't be 50-50 with actual with actual attendance rates at, like, whatever, 30 or 40%, which means that basically fourth of, or even like fifth of a country decides for the rest of the people. This is absolute garbage, but that's like a video. This is like a whole video topic I should do some other time. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is, no, guys, you don't live in a dictatorship state. You're not living in authoritarian even states or totalitarian states. You're just living with shitty government. And that shitty government you can at least influence through elections, through protests, which are allowed in your countries. And here it is not. And here, if you are a musician who, like DDT, was basically singing against war back in, probably when, back at Afghanistan or like Chechen wars, something like that, he was banned basically under USSR. He was allowed to play in Russia, and now he's getting banned again, basically in Russia and in Belarus, whatever. So the guy, certain people from that list went from totalitarian USSR through 3 period of, like, at least potential to become a democracy, whatever, to now getting back into totalitarianism again. Just think about how shit is that. Okay,